On the eve of tomorrow's elections, we examine a recent book with a sweeping view of American history that is especially resonant right now. Jeffrey Brown has more.
It's an ambitious project, a single-volume story of America, and ideally timed, arriving at a moment of intense division over where the nation has come from and where it's headed. These Truths, a History of the United States, sets out to explore an experiment in government that continues to unfold. Author Jill Lepore is an award-winning Harvard historian and staff writer at The New Yorker, and welcome to you.
Thank you.
Can I start with the ambition, the intent? You say at the beginning you did this because it was important and it felt worth the try.
It used to be that historians at a certain point in their career would write such a book. It would be the capstone of year-long, right before you become an emeritus professor.
Right.
And that has fallen away entirely. I think American history, a kind of consensus about the American past, dismantled at the same time the country kind of began to divide. And books like this aren't really written anymore. I mean, it's not just the length of the thing. It is, in particular, the attempt to use your scholarly authority to tell a long, big, sweeping story.
So inevitably, of course, there are the contradictions and the paradoxes of American history. You have 800 pages of it, right? From this idea of natural rights and equality to the institution of slavery, to open borders, to now we must limit who comes in. That never stops, right?
No, it never stops. I mean, it's the beauty and the tragedy. It's the rise and the fall, and it's the fall and the rise, and everything always has a kind of doubleness to it. The trick, though, was to try to see both of those. Benjamin Franklin, invented the bifocal and always said, you need to be able to see at the same time things that are up close and things that are far away. And this book, I aimed to kind of have a binocular vision, right, that we could track the kind of well-thumbed political history. We can march from president to president and see presidential administrations and evaluate them. But that we really also need to reckon with the incredible work that's been done in the academy the last half century, recovering and investigating the lives of everyone else, of women, of people of color. And that those are also political stories and they're also origin stories. And that you can't understand the presidency or politics with a capital P without bringing these two strands together.
I asked you to think about an episode because there's too many in this book, right? It's all of American history, but something that surprised you or that made you, gave you some understanding of where we're at today.
Yeah, and so much that I found out working on this book surprised me, but taking stock in particular, really in a systematic way, of how women participate in American political culture decades before women get the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment. And what you see when you do that is that women develop a very specific political style, this moral suasion, the moral crusade. Because you think about it, you can't vote. What you can do is tell men how to vote. And how are you going to tell men how to vote? You're powerless. Well, you're going to say, well, I have more moral authority than you. So this whole rhetoric of women being morally superior. So that's where we get abolition and temperance, later prohibition. And in the 20th century, so many moral crusades that are led by women have really not been fully examined by political historians. Or so if you think about Phyllis Schlafly, just the leading architect of modern conservatism, isn't fully appreciated in that way. She starts out in the 1950s as a member of the Kitchen Cabinet, this sort of GOP ladies auxiliary of the Federation of Republican Women's Clubs. So she goes on to, she's a McCarthyite, she campaigns for Goldwater, she's a big promoter of Goldwater. But then in 1972, she forms this organization to stop the ERA, and it is a moral crusade, and it really realigns the party system. I think we think a lot about, it's quite fashionable to talk about the Southern strategy of the Nixon administration, right? We don't think about the female strategy, but the parties realigned around questions of the equality of women. And I think now, if you think about the Me Too movement, which is, of course, a moral crusade, it comes out of that long tradition. And otherwise,
even though it's coming at a very different angle.
From a very different angle, but it also is about the law not really working, right? It's not, women have the right to vote, but the law isn't actually protecting women, granting women the equal protection, because the ERA never was ratified. So there's this kind of failure of a political settlement that we see the legacy of now.
I mean, focusing on women, telling the story of blacks, this is in a way bringing people into the history that were not there always.
Yeah, well, they were there in the sense that you know now, we know now, we can see now that the Supreme Court and gender politics are not separate strands, right? Those things are intersecting. that has always been the case. It's just history has been written in such a way as to artificially divide them. So sort of systematically, not some grand conspiracy, but just about how historians decided to write about the American past. They set aside the things that women do as apolitical. They set aside slavery as an economic issue, not a political issue. So there's this weird, almost like a segregated past.
So inevitably the book leads to now. When you look at now in the framework of this long history, where does Donald Trump fit? Where are we in this American story?
Yeah, this is a very troubled time. Few people would deny that this is a troubled time. The partisan divide is extremely wide. Income inequality, which has been growing ever since 1968, is higher than it has ever been before. By many metrics, our politics are not working effectively. Policy gridlock, right? So and the tone of our politics is particularly dire. So by that measure, you could say this is a very difficult time. There are all kinds of other measures where you gotta have some sense of proportion, right? I mean, I think when people say the country's never been so divided before, that often is a way of saying I'm only thinking about the country as the history of white people, because when you think about people who are enslaved as a political community, they are deeply divided from the rest of the country.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no moment before emancipation that is a better moment than today. For women, there's no moment before safe delivery and childbirth than is a better moment than today. So I think one of the reasons to tell such a long story with the big long sweep is to get that sense of proportion. That said, Donald Trump didn't win the popular vote, so you can't really write an account of American history whose whole rationale is to explain how he got elected. Could have gone another way. The history is full of contingencies and chaos, and not everything falls to an explanation that is a pattern.
All right, the book is These Truths. Jill Lepore, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.